Hello and welcome to another edition of the CBB Super Show. I'm your host, Walt Waddell, aka Dub Deuces 85, the niche sports connoisseur and college basketball aficionado. We're pulling double duty tomorrow. We got college football on tap, 2-game slate, and then another 6-game DFS slate for college basketball. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. Hope you guys had a fun and profitable day one. Tons of games today. It was outrageous from 8 a.m. Pacific time. Still games going on now. A lot of things to process there. But we're going to make tonight all about the 6-game slate. Real efficient there. Going to do our thing, break down each game, kind of talk about projected starting lineups, and go from there. Also provide a core and look through any prize picks or underdog props that are up. Wasn't a ton up last night. They let them or pushed them through later in the day today. So I expect more of the same tomorrow and probably even less props available because there aren't a ton of competitive games. All right, so let's get right into it. The 6-game slate. We're going to start off here with the FIU versus Rice game. Total of 147.5. Rice is a favorite of 5.5 points. Looking through it here, this is going to be a pretty neat little slate. There's not huge prize pool, so probably won't see like a ton of variety of opponents, but we'll see. College basketball's here. People want to play. There's a lot of unknowns with these teams, which can definitely give us an edge. The projection sheet today was a little bit noisy, as I warned you guys in the Discord, but we'll definitely have that up for tomorrow as well. Just hit the ground running here hard so we can continue to try to find plays like Con Knipple in company. With the Rice Owls, what you need to know about them: new coach Rob Lanier coming over from SMU, built through the portal fairly well, pretty much a completely different team. Everybody that was, relevant last year either graduated or hit the portal. Trey Broadnax, Kellen Amos, Denver Anglin, Jalen Smith, Caden Powell, and Jimmy Oladukin are the portal transfers who are going to be in the rotation. And then freshman Aaron Powell from LA has stood out at practice. He is the one that is probably going to get some additional playing time right away. When you look at the prices there, Broadnax, the best overall player talent-wise and previous statistically speaking from his time with SC Upstate, averaged over 14 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Definitely a solid play. FIU in the past has played very, very fast, not a lot of defense, and same with Rice, but different regime for this Rice team, which is a under Coach Lanier. Historically, his teams play hard-nosed defense, and that is a major factor and priority for that club. So not necessarily going to be as high on FIU as we would normally be with the Rice teams on the slate. A couple of other newer players: Jacob Darr, somebody who's going to be in the rotation. Caden Powell, more of a shot blocker. Oladukin, more of a rebounder. So you've got some kind of one-off stat type of guys. Amos comes over in the portal from Central Connecticut, third team all-conference there. 7.2K, a little bit expensive there. Broadnax would be the one if you want to pay up 4.74. I have no issue doing so in a game that we project to be pretty competitive. He's the one that I would be the most confident in. Also have Trey Patterson on the team, formerly from Villanova, didn't play a whole lot, had some pedigree from high school. So you've got some options here with this Rice team. We're going to play this slate similar to the way that we played tonight's slate. We're going to make decisions based off of starting lineups. We'll have an idea of where we want to go. Hey, if this player is going to start, we want him. If he doesn't start, we'll kind of pivot around and see. And that's kind of how we did it tonight. We were very active in the Discord for the first slate. Hopefully you guys felt pretty good about that. posting starting lineups and kind of in real time talking about how we're going to process that information. So we'll do that with these teams that, don't have a lot of info out there. Some of them played some exhibition games, so we have that to rely on. But until we see those starting lineups for a few of these clubs, it's going to be a little bit harder for us to sit here and say who's going to be a good play and who isn't, at least pre-lock. FIU have to replace a bulk of their scoring. Arturo Dean, their best player and sophomore, transferred out. Javante Hawkins out of eligibility. That was like 55% of their scoring between those two players. Jonathan Ibar and Deshaun Gittins are both coming back after suffering season-ending injuries last year. They expect to be the upper-tier players on this roster. And then you have Jaden Lipscomb and Onyx Pastoria, which is an elite name. Onyx Pastoria, I mean, come on. That is like one of those great names that you'd see when NCAA buzzer beaters accounts projecting and putting up the all-name teams from D1, D2, and D3. Overall, those two are expected to have bigger roles. And then freshman guard Ashton Williamson, somebody to look out for. I'm seeing a little bit of chatter about him on FIU boards and from their beat writers. Yes, I do check boards for teams like FIU. Going the extra mile for you guys. And then Jaden Brewer, likely a returning starter as well. Looking at the prices for FIU, Giddins and Ibar in the upper 6K range. They were secondary options last year, moving to primary options this year. I do think Jaden Brewer is a nice look at 6K. Would expect him to step up and be more of a primary scorer for this team. But all of the chatter with three-point shooting and the way that this team is going to play, Pastoria, who sits there at 5'6", and Lipscomb, who's all the way down there at 4K, those look like the two plays we want to kind of focus on here, especially if we're building out some additional teams, not necessarily main lineups, but absolutely teams that we want to, or players that we want to consider in our player pool here for day 2. Giving you some for Brewer, at least 25.5% usage rate last year, 25% shot rate. Not much of a three-point shooter, but did a great job drawing fouls, almost 6 fouls per 40, top 75 in the country there. Replacing Hawkins as a big-time shot taker, 27.5% shot rate. And then Arturo Dean, who had a 29.4% shot rate. So look for Brewer to absorb some of that. Deshaun Gittins, before he got injured, 19.5% usage rate, 19% shot rate. Took a bunch of threes, only 28% shooter, but there's volume there to be had. And then Ibar, who got hurt after 13 games, a solid rebounding rate, shot about 32% from long range and about a 19% usage rate. So those are those players that are returning that we can look to. Again, starting lineup's going to be important there. If I had to pick a player right now to be like, hey, this is the Florida international player that you want to use, and not sitting here thinking that game is going to necessarily be on the optimal. I think there's going to be a lot of busts in this particular game. But I would say Pastoria is the one to look at there. But we will see how starting lineups shake out. All right, moving on to the next game. New Orleans, the Privateers taking on Kansas State. 26.5-point favorites are Kansas State. Now, 4 of the 6 games on this slate are blowout city, 20 or more point favorites. We had the Rice game, which is pretty close, and then Washington, UC Davis. 13.5-point spread there, so that's pretty close. But overall, a bunch of blowouts. New Orleans is an interesting team, let me tell you. They did play Southern Miss in an exhibition game recently. Competitive game, really fun to watch. I saw a bunch of highlights on social media with this one. It was 105-102 score. And you might sit here and think, well, what's the big deal about Southern Miss? They played them tough, whatever. Southern Miss has a pretty talented group of players. Andre Curbelo, you may remember him, days of St. John's, Illinois, and still around, plays for Southern Miss, Denijay Harris, who didn't play a lot for Arkansas last year, but he put up damn near a triple-double in this exhibition game. He looks good. And then Neftali Alvarez, who has been around the block as well, several programs. So that's a really good Southern Miss team that the Privateers were able to keep up with. Looking at that exhibition score, they treated it like a real game. James White, Kerwin Prince, Jamon Vincent, Josh Short, and J.R. Jacobs were the starters, and they all played 25-plus minutes. So it was basically a dress rehearsal, a true exhibition game, not one of those private scrimmages, secret scrimmages where they stop the clock every couple minutes. They're subbing guys in and out. They're not real game environments. MJ Thomas and Day Hunter were the key pieces off the bench. Day Hunter, famous Hawaii Road running back in the DFS circles, but this is not the same Hunter. I like this team. I think that obviously in a blowout situation, you want to be a little bit worried, but it's not like they're going to pull their guys. And we saw that today with several teams. Maine, who actually kept it with Duke for a while. Wright State, like some of these teams that got curb stomped, they still stuck with their starters. And that's an important thing. I think a lot of times we look at blowouts and, we can't play the guys on Duke as much because they're going to get pulled early. Can't play the guys on, Team A, and then we kind of tend to forget about the team that's getting stomped and go away from them a little bit. So we definitely want to have some exposure here to the privateers. Nobody priced up above 6-1. I'm going to read you the box score here for that New Orleans game. James White, 34 minutes, took 21 damn shots, 23 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, and a steal. James White. 1 game sample, so we don't want to get too excited, but that's pretty damn impressive. Kerwin Prince, 26 minutes, 7 of 8 shooting, 5 of 7 at the line, 10 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 block, 2 steals, 19 points. Jamon Vincent, who goes by Turk, how could you not like that? 32 minutes, 7 of 13 shooting, 18 points, 3 steals, 3 rebounds. Josh Short, 31 minutes, 15 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds on 4 of 13 shooting. And then J.R. Jacobs, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, 4 steals, only 3-point shot, 1 of 7, but his peripheral games was strong. And then the 2 main guys off the bench, Day Hunter, 22 minutes, 8 points. And then MJ Thomas, 13 minutes, had 10 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist. James White taking 21 shots. I don't care if it's an exhibition or not. That's something I want to look at. He is priced all the way down there at 3.6K. Might people miss him if they don't look at that box score? Definitely possible. I don't know that a lot of people will be looking to roster New Orleans players necessarily. And because we do include exhibition box scores in the initial projections that we build, I suspect James White's going to project pretty damn ham because of that. Now, let's pull up. Let me go to UAB. I'm going to try and get you some efficiency stats here, because James White was on UAB last year. You probably don't remember that, and that name James White might sound familiar to you. He did play for Ole Miss, started his career in 2022, played about 18 games freshman for Ole Miss, kind of a secondary role player off the bench, not a huge amount of minutes, but always had a high shot rate, 22.5% shot rate his freshman year, 22.5% shot rate his sophomore year. Plays for UAB last season, 21.5% shot rate, just played 7 games before he decided to call it quits. And in his first game since transferring to New Orleans, he takes 21 shots in the exhibition. Clearly, James White is going to be a dude for this team. And at 3.6, a likely started playing 3 or 30 plus minutes. He's definitely going to be one of my favorite preferred values in a similar fashion that JoJo Tugler was on last night's / today's slate, depending on when you're watching this. So going a little bit deeper there on James White. Let's pull up his profile. Had offers from Alabama, Arizona State, Florida, and Florida State. So, I mean, we're talking about a kid from Conyers, Georgia, who can absolutely ball out. Feel like that's going to be a sneaky one. Maybe as the day goes on, people start to make that connection there. But James White, priced at 3.6, he is going to be our guy. As far as the other starters, Vincent at 6'1", Short at 5'9", a little bit expensive. I can get to Prince at 4.6 and feel good about it. J.R. Jacobs at 3.2. Operating as a point guard, initiating the offense. Not going to be much of a scorer, but he will get steals. He will get assists at 3.2. Can definitely take the shot there, but clearly we like White. The primary bench pieces that we saw, Thomas, he's priced down there at 3K. Day Hunter also at 3K. So don't be afraid to get some exposure to some of these cheap privateer players on such a small slate. Kansas State, the Wildcats, they've got a bit of a new look roster here. The exhibition they played against, who was it? Fort Hays, mighty Fort Hays. Semi-blowout, 18-point win. They played most of their starters around 20 to 22 minutes. CJ Jones did play 32, and we saw Doug McDaniel come off the bench for 29. But the rotation looked like this. Brendan Housen, the Villanova transfer, Coleman Hawkins, who comes over from Illinois after a bidding war, David Ngason, who is still in college, CJ Jones, Akor, Michaela Bridge, Doug McDaniel, and David Castillo. Now, Ugana Onyenso, the Kentucky transfer, is on this team as well, and Bay Fall, formerly a highly rated recruit that went to Arkansas, both played sub 10 minutes in that exhibition. Let's circle over to Kansas State. Doug McDaniel priced at 9-4. If he's not starting, there's no way I'm going to pay that price. And in a blowout spot here, he might get, if he gets some second unit run, that's okay. But if he was priced at 7K, then we could say that we could justify that second unit run. We can't at 9-4. We can look to Coleman Hawkins at 7-9, who I think is going to put up a healthy amount of rebounds, blocks, other categories there. Max Jones did not play in the exhibition game there, dealing with a lower leg issue. He is going to play in this game, so that's going to crowd things up a little bit. Formerly the Cal State Fullerton player who averaged almost 16 points per game. A little bit expensive there. Achor was the tournament hero last tournament, remember, against Kansas. He was major chalk. 37 fantasy points, 9 for 22 shooting, held his own against Hunter Dickinson throughout that Samford team. They should have beaten Kansas, right? They had a real good chance there and pushed them, only lost by 4 points. But Corey, he's going to be a real solid rebounder as well. Going to take some time to get used to upper tier competition, but going up against a privateers team that size-wise, maybe not up to par there. I expect him to have a pretty solid game as well at 7K. He's a little more reasonable. CJ Jones, who got the start over McDaniel, and because Max Jones did not play, somewhat of an interesting look. Now, he played for Illinois Chicago, the Flames, last year, an 11-point scorer, pretty reputable fantasy player, but 6.8K. Just a bit of a logjam there at guard that I'm not really trusting. We do get guard forward eligibility on Coleman Hawkins, which is a little bit weird. I don't suspect that'll be a regular thing. But that does allow you to kind of play around there with your lineup. Brendan Housen, 4-1 cheap. We know his main value, what he did at Villanova, was shoot threes. When we're starved for value, we were okay plugging him in and getting 12 to 15 fantasy points on this particular slate. I don't think that's going to be good enough. So I'm kind of looking elsewhere. Ngason at 5.8, probably the price he should be. Onyenso at 4.3, if you think he gets somewhere closer to 20 minutes in a likely blowout, that makes sense for GBP. And Michaela Bridge at 3.4, who's a player they really like. So to me, Coleman Hawkins, worth paying up for at 7.9, Akor at 7K. I think those two are going to be the top overall performers. Let your opponents play Doug McDaniel, especially if he doesn't start. And even if he does, he still has to stare down the bench and look at Max Jones and CJ Jones, Brendan Housen, and all these other guards. They have a litany of guard options that they can use. All right, moving on to the next game here, we have Bethune-Cookman versus Texas Tech. Total of 143.5. The Red Raiders are favored by 27.5 points. Now, this is a fun game. Bethune-Cookman, Zion Harmon is gone, one of their best players. He's off to Seton Hall. They returned just one starter from last year's team in Reggie Ward Jr., but that's not necessarily a bad thing because Bethune-Cookman hasn't really been that great. They've had some success under Reggie Theus, but looking to kind of, take that next step. Now, they have a transfer by the name of Antoine Jones, and if you go back in your memory to some CBB Super Shows back in like 2020, I meant to say, and just after COVID, Anton Jones, milling around Creighton and Memphis, and really just a player that I really liked. Now, he's bounced around to a bunch of different programs. He was last at UCF. He actually had some pretty decent games for us late in the season. Now he's on Bethune-Cookman. I expect him to be a high-volume, high-minute player for them. He's priced only at 3.8K. This is one of those spots like against Houston tonight, right? Jackson State had some dudes. Deshaun Ruffin didn't end up, playing. But they had some guys that looked good and they projected well. But I kept on warning, like, hey, it's Houston. We don't really want to target against Houston too much. DVP is not a factor yet. We need more data. This is one that I'd be worried about because Texas Tech historically, regardless of who's coached over the last 4 to 5 years, they've been a very defensive, highly intense defensive prowess type of team. I will say, if you're going to give me 30 minutes of Anton Jones taking, 10 plus shots at 3.8, even against Tech, like I'm on board with it. I think he's going to have a really good season. But I am a little bit leery. I still lean towards James White as the play there. And when you look at this slate today, there's not as many pay up options. Like you've got Doug McDaniel there at 9.4 as the highest priced option. To me, that's a little bit silly. Instead, we've got some guys like in this game on the other side that we're going to talk about in a minute, like Darion Williams, who's only priced at 8.2. He would be my preferred and top overall pay up, along with Great Osabor at 8.7. So we don't necessarily have to run a ton of value in our lineups for this particular slate like we just did. Other guys coming in here on Bethune-Cookman, Manhattan transfer Daniel Ruzin and 10 Tech transfer Jerome Bea. Really would just be a decision point of Anton Jones for me. Jesus Carollo Martin, he comes in from Missouri. He had some moments last year. He did have some eligibility issues. I think those are solved now. And then also Gianni Hunt, who spent significant amount of time with Oregon State, you might remember, and then he was with Northridge last year. So there are some names on this Bethune-Cookman team, and there's a reason for to think that they're going to be successful. But I think the real decision there is Anton Jones. And this is one that I do want to see the actual starting lineup for. They have another player in Trey Thomas, who played for Hampton last year, a pretty productive guy. So a lot of new pieces coming together here for Bethune-Cookman. We don't have any exhibition scores or any kind of lean there on what the starting lineup will look like. So we'll kind of reserve judgment there until we see that starting lineup, which will be in the second wave of games at the 5 p.m/8 p.m. window on the East Coast. Now on the Texas Tech side, all about Darion Williams at 8.2. He's going to have a monster year. Hell, by the end of the season, he was playing every single minute. You'll remember the Red Raiders, they were dealing with injuries galore, ineffectiveness. They didn't have much of a bench. It was just continually problematic for them to field an entire starting lineup and a bench themselves. They were running guys who were basically one step above walk-ons. But Williams really blew up, showed himself as more than just a role player, became a fantasy asset that, you could pay $9K for and feel pretty damn good about it. Putting up 41 against Oklahoma State, 40 against West Virginia towards the end of the season. So I love Darion Williams. The reason is he doesn't need to score to put up those big points. High-level rebounder, over 7.5 last year, over a steal and a half last year, over 2.5 assists, average right around 11 points per game. Now, I do think he raises that average, but I think we're talking about a guy who consistently puts up 30 to 35 fantasy points, and he doesn't necessarily need to score 20 real points to make that happen. Looking at his efficiency rankings last year, of course, they had Joe Toussaint, Pop Isaacs, big time usage guys there. Darion Williams' overall usage was right around 17.6%, shot rate even less at 17.3%. I expect both of those to go up, but he was top 100 in true shooting, very efficient, 20% defensive rebounding rate. He was the 19th best three-point shooter I took 96 attempts, so he's not on the official list because you have to take 150 plus to do that. But 46% of those 96 triples, so he's improved there in that regard, and an 88% free throw shooter, and he got to the line a lot, especially towards the latter part of the season. So we love Darion Williams. He should probably be priced higher than this on a slate this size. I do expect him to be relatively popular for that reason. They do bring in the transfer from New Mexico, JT Toppin, who flirted with the NBA, got some much needed, info on what he needs to work on. He's priced at 8.1. Love him too. I have no problems running a double Texas Tech stack, possibly more on the short slate. Now, what will Toppin's role be on this Texas Tech team? I think he's going to be a primary offensive weapon. When you look at the guards, Chance McMillan's back, more of kind of a role-playing type. They do bring in Elijah Hawkins, who played extremely well last year for Minnesota. Averaged about 9.5 points per game, kind of a table setter, almost 8 assists per game. So you don't have the Pop Isaacs. He's on Creighton now, high level, high usage guy that's going to have to take a ton of shots. So they're going to rely a lot on Williams and Toppin to generate that offense. They also have running center Federico from Pittsburgh. We know he's not much of an offensive option. He's going to rebound, block shots, do that. So there's going to be a ton of shots that funnel to Toppin and Williams. Toppin as a three-point shooter, non-existent. That's an area of his game he's going to have to work on to be even more effective. But those are the top two options on Texas Tech by far. Kerwin Walton's down there at 4'8", not doing that. We are expecting Devin Cambridge, who's back again. He's dealing with the knee issue that kept him out long-term last year, to play. I do think it's going to be one of those situations where there's a bit of a minutes cap placed on him, so not really going to be able to utilize him just yet. And then they do have the transfer Kevin Overton, who transfers in from Drake, spent time with Tucker DeVries last year, 4.7K. He is more of a scoring option on the perimeter, but he's not going to be, some high usage guy. At least I don't believe him to be. So overall, Toppin, Darian Williams, those two guys for us. All right, moving on, we have Central Arkansas versus BYU. New coaches for both. BYU's favored to win by 29, total of 149. BYU, this should be a absolute, ugly game overall. Physicality on the BYU side. Let's talk about Central Arkansas first. They have a new coach, totally revamped roster. They only have 3 players returning from last year: Elias Cato, Gloria Tim, and Javian Guy King. They lost Cameron Hunter and my guy, Carl Daughtery Jr. to the portal, both of them out. They have some intriguing freshmen coming in. Ty Robinson, who was the MVP of the Arkansas State High School All-Star Game last summer. And then Lane Taylor, freshman coming in, the number 3 scorer in Arkansas State history. So they have some, straight up high school ballers from the Arkansas area, but we have to take it with a grain of salt, knowing they went to Central Arkansas, not Arkansas. There is going to be an ability here for them to get some shots up. A lot of shots left behind with guys like Hunter gone and Daughtery. Looking at those freshmen I mentioned, both Min Price, Taylor there at 3K, somebody I expect to probably jump into the starting lineup immediately, and the same there with Ty Robinson. As far as those returners, Cato, 6'7", technically their best returner. That's a little bit of a high price for me. Etam at 6K, I'm okay there. And then Guy King at 4'4", who is playable. But I think this BYU defense, just like they're in football, man, they're just rolling through guys. I think this BYU team is going to be one that we don't necessarily want to stack against too often or even target against all that often, especially with a team like Central Arkansas that I think is going to take some time to kind of come together. On the BYU side, we do expect Dallin Hall to play. He has the questionable tag. And the same thing with Fusini Traore. Those are going to be their top 2 guys this year with the revamped roster, with Coach Mark Pope taking a few guys and heading to Kentucky. With those injury designations, I'm not too keen on paying up for them. Now, we do have a different coach in the mix. So with that, Traore, the days of him playing, 18 to 21 minutes and putting up huge scores and thinking like, damn, why couldn't he just play 35 minutes and break the slate every time? We don't know if that's, not going to be the case this time with the new coaching staff. He may play 30-plus minutes. We'll see if he can handle it. If he can, we know his fantasy point per minute number has been elite throughout the course of his collegiate career. So something to keep an eye on as the season goes on, but I'm not sure I'm dipping my toe in the water with either Traore or Hall right away here. Do have some viability with Trevin Nill at 6'5". We know Richie Saunders, they're a crowded rotation. He's there at 6'3". Cannon Catchings has gotten some pretty nice hype throughout the offseason. We do like Keba Kaida. Keba Kaida for Utah last year, transferring to BYU. Early in the season, Kaida put up these ridiculous numbers in short minutes, and it took forever for his projection to have enough game logs to kick out every slate. It was like Kaida 7X, Kaida 8X, and we had to keep putting that caveat like, he's probably not going to put that up every single time. And he did kind of fall off there at the end, Utah playing him less than 20 minutes. We'll see what his role is here. If Traore were to be out, that would bump Kaida way up the priority list for me. So we'll see. They're still pretty crowded in the front court, as you would expect. They do bring in also Dawson Baker, who has been a pretty, when healthy, consistent production type player. And then the international freshman Igor Demin, is an absolute stud during his time in the international scene. We've seen international guys come to the collegiate level and struggle, though. So it remains to be seen. Is he going to be worth this 7-3 price point? His talent alone and what NBA scouts have said about him, the price of 7-3 may not be enough, but I'm not convinced he steps right into it, understands the way the collegiate game is played, and puts up some huge monster number even against a subpar team like Central Arkansas. Had he been in the 5K range, I think I would be willing to take a shot at him on that talent and upside alone. But at 7-3, he can do some real damage here, and especially when we don't really know what this BYU rotation is quite going to be just yet. If some guys are out, such as Traore or Hall, that might change things a little bit, but we'll kind of play that as it happens and watch out for news, look for starting lineups, kind of just grind out the slate game by game, wave by wave, like we did tonight. All right, moving on, we have Idaho State versus Arizona State. Arizona State as a 20-point favorite, total of 139.5. Now, anytime Arizona State's going to be a favorite of 10 points even, like I'm going to want to bet the other team. So the fact that they're 20-point favorites here, it would seem like an easy bet towards Idaho State. The problem is Idaho State is going to be real bad. And even though Arizona State's also going to be real bad, I know that's next level analysis there for you. I don't think they'll be able to keep up. Arizona State, they got absolutely walloped by Duke in that exhibition, but Idaho State's not Duke, and I think they'll be talented enough to actually do some things here against an Idaho State team. You would think. We'll start with Idaho State. Only 2 returners from last year, and Isaiah Griffin and AJ Bergen. We don't know a lot about this team. Previews are pretty rare for this program. It's a complete reset of the deck. It would be a simple situation of, let's see the starting lineup. I don't want to completely rule out using anyone on this team. Griffin's the highest priced at 6.5 and Bergen at 4.9. Have a little bit of interest there, but I definitely want to see the starting lineup because, again, I think this Arizona State team is going to bleed fantasy points, but I don't want to get so cute with an Idaho State club that has a lot of cheap guys, but can still do a lot of damage. If we play Bergen at 4.9 and it gives us 3 fantasy points, we're just the night's done, right? So you have to tread lightly and carefully there. On the ASU side, let's pull up the unenjoyable 103-47 loss that they suffered at the hands of Duke. In that one, we saw the starting group, Alston Mason, Sean Phillips, BJ Freeman, Jaden Quaitnance, and Adam Miller. Jaden played 31 minutes, Mason 32, only 11 for Sean Phillips, dealt with foul problems, BJ Freeman 20, and Adam Miller 20. Off the bench, we saw the other freshman, Josen Sanin, who does have some upside as a scorer. Amir Ali and Bashir Jahed all played 19-plus minutes off the bench. So that's going to be your primary rotation there for ASU. Freeman was an absolute freak last year, Horizon God. Anytime, it's usually in the end of the season when you get Horizon League tournament games. But for UW Milwaukee, BJ Freeman was an absolute stud. Will he have that much usage on an ASU team that is lacking overall talent? It's definitely possible. He's a bit spendy at 8.4. Obviously, the competition against Idaho State's not there. So if he's going to take 15-plus shots, definitely could see that as a potential optimal play. He only took 9 shots, 7 of which were threes against Duke. He didn't want any part of that Duke interior, so he just hung out on the perimeter. Nobody on the Bengals team is going to be able to hold him back. So certainly in play there. I think Quaitnance at 6.7 is the more intriguing. They flipped him. He comes there as a likely one-and-done prospect, lottery upside. So he's probably the preferred option for me at 6.7 price and a forward. Bashir Jihad, he had really good stats during his time with Ball State in the MAC, just constantly putting up huge numbers. I don't expect that from him. Even in this matchup here, he'll probably play somewhere between 20 to 25 minutes, but he's priced so high. He's priced like he's still in the MAC at Ball State, so tread carefully there with Bashir. It's going to take time for some of these guys who transferred up to kind of filter through, have some games where they're more at a reasonable price point. We know just what we're going to be dealing with here in upper tier games, which this isn't necessarily an upper tier game, but we'll see them with competition and playing with guys who are more talented than them. Alton Mason at 6'7", definitely interesting. Spent the last season or two with Missouri State. Big time score, 18 points per game, almost 30 fantasy points per game. Was definitely one of the best players on the floor in that game against Duke. 2 steals, 3 assists, 3 rebounds. He was kind of filling it up in all categories. Only shot 2 of 9, but he was one of the, what I noticed watching that was that he was not fearful. A lot of the other ASU guys were fearful of taking it to the rack. He wasn't. So I think he could have a pretty nice game here as an aggressive playmaker. 6'6" for the secondary freshman, Josen Sanin. They also stole him, flipped his commitment. Definitely want to wait and see on him. Not ready to jump quite in there. Sean Phillips as a starter, 5'4". I don't think so. Has a lot of foul issues, as you know. I think that's too high price for him. If he's down in the low 4K range, we could probably justify that. But at this stage, with the value that we can get from the privateers and Bethune-Cookman, we don't have to pay a 5'4" price tag for Phillips. Quaintance for only $1,300 more and is a much better play. Just makes way more sense. All right, we'll go to the last game on the slate here, and a favorite of mine, UC Davis versus your Washington Huskies. Total of 144.5. Washington is a 13.5 point favorite. Now, I want to be very clear here. I am a Huskies homer. I love the Huskies in all sports: football, basketball, swimming, volleyball. Like, I support Washington all the time. But I won't blindly support them when there's money on the line. And that's something I want to be clear about. 13.5 points is way too much against this UC Davis team. So betting wise, you want to take the points with UC Davis. Betting wise, you want to sprinkle the money line, because I am a true believer in this UC Davis team. And I think that they're going to give the Huskies all they can handle. Now, I know more about UC Davis than your average person that's not going to the school or supporting a kid on the team. And I kind of do have a kid on the team, because you might remember Carl Daughtery Jr., who I got to break the transfer portal news, got to break when he hit the portal. I got to break what team he selected. He transfers from Central Arkansas, which ironically is on the slate as well, to UC Davis. And then another kind of ironic scenario is that they're opening their season against Washington Huskies, which happens to be an area that I have access to. You know, I'm being a West Coaster from California up to Washington, and so me and my older son will be going to that game. We're gonna be sitting on the UC Davis side. I'm not trying to be a Benedict Arnold, but just really a lot of support for Carl. Last year, when Central Arkansas was on the slate twice, we had him at super low rostership, min price. He completely detonated, had fantastic games, really good season. And funny enough, doing my tweeting out, hey, I want to get Carl Daughtery Jr. to start. This kid's too good, and just kind of messing around. His dad saw those tweets, messaged me, asking me how, I don't know how you found my son, but I appreciate the support. We got to talking, throughout the season, checking in on him. And, what happened during the summer was cool, getting to break the transfer portal news. And now I get a chance to support him. So I'm looking forward to this game a lot, and it's going to be really fun. I haven't been able to get to a Husky game, between work, doing this, day job, kids. It's kind of tough to do that, but I made sure that me and my older son were going to make it to this game. So I will have the inside track to starting lineups and how this one's going to go. Definitely want a lot of exposure to this one. Now, UC Davis, they've got a really strong team. This is a team, like the Big West has 3 or 4 squads that can legitimately make the dance. Now, they won't all, but they're whoever wins the conference tournament. But they have a myriad of teams who are good enough to win a game or two in the Big Dance already. I can tell you that right now. Elijah Pepper is finally out of eligibility. Pepper played for them for a couple of seasons. 8th highest shot rate last year, 37% 3-point shooter. Steals rate high, just contribute in all categories. A great overall player. Ty Johnson, who flirted with the portal and had some offers to go pro and some NIL offers to go to higher rated conferences, chose to come back. And Ty Johnson was a nice sidekick to Elijah Pepper. Now he's going to be the alpha. Looking at the efficiency rankings for Ty Johnson, they are tantalizing. 32.2% usage rate, which was 13th highest in the country. 32.5% shot rate, 33rd highest. An assist rate of 27%. So not only was he scoring at a high level, but he was diming for his teammates. A lot of the times that was Elijah Pepper. A steals rate of 3.7%, top 70 in the country. Fouls drawn rate of 6.5%, which is 34th best in the country last year. He shot about 78% from the line, 31% from long range. You want to see that come up. But a true 3-level scorer, Ty Johnson, is an absolute lock and load. He is priced appropriately at $8K. So you hope maybe people won't notice him. And you look at his logs, and, as that Robin to Elijah Pepper's Batman, 8K is going to seem like a little bit high, but he is absolutely a great play. The Huskies are a completely revamped roster, new coaching staff, as you know. It's going to take time for them to come together and gel. Like this UC Davis team, they're already together. I think that they're going to have us on their heels very quickly, and a big reason why is going to be Ty Johnson. So we're all in on Ty Johnson for sure. They do bring in the Pepperdine transfer, Nils Cooper, who is a pretty solid role player. At 5'7", he's okay. He's going to have a much bigger role on this roster for sure. Some returners from last year, Leo DeBrule, Nico Rokak. Those are fine overall kind of secondary plays, but you know where I'm going. You know where I'm going with this. Down at 3.8K, my man Carl Daugherty Jr. Let's pull up his efficiency. He's going to be a starter. He will get to operate in that Robin role to Ty Johnson's Batman. And there's nothing wrong with being a semi sidekick. He's going to have a very high usage. He's going to get his opportunity to score. The main reason that the staff even brought him in because they call him the microwave, the whole microwave scorer thing. Like he that's his nickname. He's just absolutely going to thrive on this team. And I have a lot of high hopes for UC Davis to not only win the Big West, but to win a game in the tournament. And that's going to be really fun to see this backcourt. Him and Ty Johnson, they're going to do some really nice things, statistically speaking, but they're going to win a lot of games together as well. Now, going back and looking at how he played for a couple seasons at Central Arkansas, when on the floor, and Arkansas went through long stretches where they didn't score. It made no sense for him not to start. They had, Tucker Anderson, who was a nice freshman as well, ends up going elsewhere, a couple of other guys, but they went through long stretches where they couldn't score, and Carl had to take over games. Had the 9th highest shot rate in the country last year at 34.2%. So a very high volume guy, 2.5% steal rate, low turnover rate, shot about 31% from long range. That's an area of his game he'll need to improve on. I think he will. But didn't get enough minutes to really impact other areas like rebounding, assists, just kind of out there doing his thing as a scorer. He's going to get every opportunity to succeed. I expect him to start 3.8K. You see, games where he would get 7 minutes, 10 minutes. Like it just made no sense. The Central Arkansas staff, how they used them. You go back to the earlier part of the year, a game against Tulsa on day one last year, put up 19 and 6 for 29.5 fantasy points. Kansas State, which was a game that was on the slate, 37.5 fantasy points, 23 and 7. Had a game where he scored 24. I believe that was against Oklahoma State, 36 fantasy points. So you see there's major upside on this kid. They played Missouri in late December, 23 and 2. They couldn't score at all. They lost 92-59. He puts up 23, follows that up with a game where he scores 29. Like this kid is a legit talent. And I'm not just saying that because I have a relationship with him. Absolutely think he's great. 3.8K. We're going to play Ty Johnson and Carl Daugherty Jr. You look at the showdown slate, which has got the Huskies and UC Davis. Captain slot for Daugherty is like 4.2K. Like, get out of here. Get out of here. Cut it out, as Joey Gladstone would say. Shout out if you know what that means. On the Husky side, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Great Osabor is the obvious one. The NIL deal that he got, made a big deal because he's one of the highest priced or highest paid players in all of college basketball. A lot of people said he's not worth it. Why is he getting paid that? Whatever. he's obviously going to be a big-time player. They had the secret scrimmage against Boise State. Now you have to take those even more with a grain of salt in exhibitions because the coaches stop those plays every 10 seconds, put their guys in different scenarios. He did score 21 points against Boise State in that game. But again, take that with a grain of salt. In their exhibition win over Western Oregon, only played 17 minutes, but filled it up. 12 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, 2 steals. That's what great Osabor does. He gets you every statistical category you need. He's a great play overall. We have a healthy Frank Kepnang, who has been injured each of the last 2 seasons. Kepnang is a real problem on the glass and as a rim protector. That's the only concern for me with UC Davis and their guards is if Frank Kepnang doesn't get into foul trouble there and plays 20 plus minutes, he's going to block a lot of shots on those drivers. In that exhibition game, only 13 minutes. They were kind of getting his conditioning back. 12 points, 2 rebounds, 3 block shots. DJ Davis, who transfers over from Butler, 16 points, knocked down 4 of 9 from long range. That's his job to shoot threes. Makai Mason was a starter in that one, comes over from Rice. 4 assists, 8 points, solid. Tyler Harris, the Portland transfer, 14 points, 7 rebounds. Wilhelm Bredenbach, who was on the team last year, 11 and 8. Christian King, who didn't see a lot of time last year, sophomore this year, 10 points. Jace Butler, who they flipped commitment from Illinois. He played pretty well, 4 points, a rebound in 10 minutes. Then we've got Casey Adbekwe, who transfers in from Oregon State. I expect him to be a pretty nice look. He's more of an insurance play for Frank Kepnang if he were to get hurt once again. So looking at it, great Osabor at 8.7K. We can pay that price. We don't have a tremendous amount of pay-ups here. So certainly looking at him, I think Lewis Courtwright is too expensive depending on his health. He's been dealing with some things, but at Rhode Island, he had some high-level games, but it's just a logjam for this team. And I think that they're going to play 10 to 11 deep. It's going to be a Leonard Hamilton-like situation. So as much as I love my Huskies and have throughout the past had a penchant for playing them in DFS, I'm certainly taking it easy on them outside of great Osabor. I don't mind paying 7.5 for DJ Davis in this one too. Would rather just pay the 8K for Ty Johnson because I know he's going to have the ball in his hands more. I need to see the price for Makai Mason drop. Tyler Harris needs to drop a little bit because I don't think that he's going to be a starter necessarily. Chris Conway at 5K. I think he's going to have a nice role in this team, but he went from playing 35 minutes on Oakland last year, tournament darlings that beat Kentucky, of course, to probably playing like 8 to 10 minutes here. So it's going to be a bit of a struggle to fit these pieces and see how the pecking order is established. So I think we can only really trust great Osabor knowing his minutes and perhaps DJ Davis. Now, depending on how the starting lineup breaks out, we can maybe take, some GBP shots with some of these other guys. Frank Kepnang is unfortunately priced too high at 6-1, but I could still see him pay off that price. I'm talking a very elite shot blocker. Was at Oregon a couple of years ago, flipped him to the good side. I just don't know that he can play conditioning-wise, fouls-wise, and everything that's happened in the last 2 years more than 20 minutes. And paying 6-1 for 20 minutes is kind of tough. But I do think he can do that. And Showdown, I'm going to definitely use Kepnang. GPP alts, certainly interested there. But I do think he ends up splitting the center minutes with Casey Adbekwe for what it's worth and Conway in small ball lineups. So that is the slate, quick and easy, little 6-gamer there for you. As far as the core that I'll be running, value Carl Daughtery Jr. at the 3.8, James White from the Privateers at 3.6. You start with those two, and you can pretty much just do whatever it is you want for the rest of the slate. And get any of the premier pay-ups that you want. As far as my preferred guy to pay up for, it is Ty Johnson at 8K. I'm kind of, really focused on that UC Davis side with White. The way I know I'm going to get asked this tomorrow a lot, so I just ranked them now. Any one price, and the pay-ups on this slate, let's call it 7, 8, and above. Let's say that's the pay-ups from Elijah Hawkins up to Doug McDaniel. So I would rank them Ty Johnson, Darion Williams, Great Osabor, JT Toppin, Freeman, then Coleman Hawkins, then Doug McDaniel, then Elijah Hawkins, like that. So really the 4 to really, I guess, try to fit if you can would be Ty Johnson, Darian Williams, Great Osabor, and like a JT Toppin. I think those four are nice. I think Coleman Hawkins, there's some risk there. We know with Coleman Hawkins, if he's feeling it, he can put up a quick 30 by halftime. But how many times have you been on the wrong end of Coleman Hawkins where, he's got 6 through 75% of the game, and you're like, what's going on here? Why did this happen? So I'm a little bit worried about Hawkins in that matchup there, especially if Kansas State, runs a deeper rotation in an expected blowout. But a very easy slate to fit who you want. We have the values there with Daugherty Jr. and White. We also have the potential value with Bethune-Cookman, depending on how that shakes out with Anton Jones. We know we like him. And then the mid-range, where I want to definitely load up some plays, Jayden Quaitons from ASU at 6'7". He's going to be one of my favorites in that range. A core at 7K. Almost prefer him from Kansas State over Coleman Hawkins, to be honest. That might be one of the decision points for me where I think the industry will go Hawkins, but taking that discount there for a core in a matchup that I think he can absolutely handle. I don't think I have a posh play of the day on a 6-gamer. I would love to say it's Carl Daugherty Jr., but I think if people look at game logs, they'll see what he actually is about and what he's probably going to be starting. And my loud-ass mouth is going to be talking about him all day tomorrow. So not really much of a secret. I think the closest thing we'll have to a posh play would be Jayden Quaitons, just because I think people are going to just do the whole stars and scrubs thing, which is an NBA type of build that people just, die hard with. So I think JQ is the closest thing, but he's not an official designation. I'm going to really try to protect that posh play of the day record and keep a tabulation on that. So, the first one was Mark Mitchell. We'll keep track of that on a sheet and see how we do there with our sneaks. But that's the slate quickly. Let's go over and check out some underdog. Pick 6 was out there. There was some pretty nice soft lines. On pick 6, it had like Norchad O'Meara 4.5 rebounds plus assists. Like that was, I don't know who messed that up. His rebounding number on pick 6 was 8.5. So, and the weird thing is that it was only the over was only picked by like 13.5% of the people that played. So even if he didn't hit it or had like the worst game ever like that, you just take the over 4.5 rebounds plus assists every time. So early season pick 6, we can add to that, but prize picks, props on DK, FanDuel, Caesars, everything, and now underdog are going to be really soft because especially with the transfer portal era that we're in, they're trying to figure out what guys are going to have. Like Con Knipple had a point prop of 11.5 today on Caesars. In the exhibition games, he put up like 20 plus pretty easily. That was a very low number that we were able to take advantage of. You can rest assured anytime there's point props for him now, it's going to be like 15.5 going forward. So something to consider here is hitting props early. Great Osabor on underdog, 14.5 points. I do see him being a 20-point scorer on day one, so I'll take the over 14.5 there. Ty Johnson, they've got all his stuff super high, 21.5, 28.5 PRA. That's a really high PRA, but he's going to be cold-blooded. So I am going to lean into that. The great Mike Kutry warns us not to take PRA too often if we can help it. We did have Con Knipple over 15.5 PRA today, which worked out fine. But Ty Johnson over 28.5 points, rebounds, and assists. And that is really all they have. They've just got the Washington UC Davis game on there. So I expect them to add maybe a few more there, which is what they did earlier today after having barely anything. And I suspect that's going to be the case here over on Prize Picks, which has nothing. So nothing I can give you there. Betting wise, let's see here. No props up yet. But again, I like the UC Davis plus 13. Sprinkle the money line even there. The Huskies, I think we win on our home court, but I just don't know that the new group, puts it out like that and scores, high enough to really win by that margin. Arizona State's already down to 18.5. So apparently people are betting Idaho State. It was 20 no more than an hour and a half ago. It's now 18.5 there. If that gets low enough, we can actually take the ASU side. I would take under 149, Central Arkansas versus BYU. Under is the sharp play. Texas Tech, they're too high. North Texas versus Evansville, the total there is 134.5, taking the under on that one as well. Went from like a million games today to a lot less. Like every single team in the world wanted to play on day one, so we have far less betting opportunities. So we're not just going to bet to bet, but those are two totals that make a lot of sense to me. And then Rice minus 5.5. That's the other one that I'll be involved with here, and we'll see if they give us any props. But a pretty light day. We'll be watching the Bowling Green football game for a time there before the Husky game starts. Harold Fannin Jr., the best tight end in all of college football. You heard it here first. Max Slates are here, and he's going to be an NFL guy on Sundays for sure. So will be content for college football tomorrow. Will be a betting article that drops as well for our two free ones. And then we'll have all the projection stuff out in the mid-afternoon time there after I've had a chance to fine-tune it. Appreciate everybody's continued support here. The Monday show will be a flagship one this season. Obviously, the Tuesday slate this week is pretty small, only 6 games, but that's typically going to be a 10 to 14 game slate, Big Tuesday in college basketball. If you don't know and you're just now starting to get into it, Tuesdays and Saturdays tend to have the most games. We get 3 to 4 game sets on Mondays, typically. Wednesdays about half the size of Tuesday. Thursdays used to be Pac-12 days. We'll see what it is now. Fridays, small slates. Saturdays, large. Sundays have the carryover. And then we're back in a new week. So you can expect our flagship CBB Super Show to be every Monday night. Won't be doing Fridays just yet. That'll be hit or miss over the next month and a half. But once college football ends, which we do that show every Thursday night, then we will have the college basketball version of the show every Monday and Friday night. Probably do away with the Saturday mornings, but we will still have the occasional. But rest assured, college football is still going on for 2 months into bowl season. So Monday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday morning, you'll have a lot of shows to continue to support. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like button. If you're watching on Twitter/X, make sure you repost from the @FTN Fantasy account. All of that interaction helps so very much. Appreciate you guys. Let's continue. Let's get those green screens and those window trips. Don't forget to watch tomorrow Mike Randall's betting show, which he is going to be doing several times a week. I think that every Tuesday morning is going to be one of the flagships for him as well. Very sharp mind. Betting Discord and the DFS Discords were popping all day. Love our community. Take care, everyone. See you guys later. Back at it tomorrow. Let's get it.